The latest little foray with stuff was um, my brother and I, my mother relocated up here from Florida, and everyone says, "Wait a minute, it's winter. Don't people go to Florida for the winter?" But no, we moved my mother up here, so we're setting her up. And while we're waiting for some of her furniture, we needed some other kinds of things for storage. So we went to that place where you go when you need an inexpensive unit from Sweden. And
Oh, yes,
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 that place.
Yes.
And they have a wonderful a philosophy, and that is there is no craftsmanship here. You are the craftsman.
Exactly.
It comes in a box, and you will eventually have to figure out how it all fits
I
together.
want to hear this, but before we get there, don't you love it when you buy something at that Swedish place?
Yeah.
And you go into that huge, I don't know if you did this, huge warehouse.
Yeah.
And they call 678427, and some guy from miles away delivers this big box to your car. Just a box, and then you've got to figure it out, right?
Oh, no, well,
Or is it different
I
then?
actually had to put it on a cart and
you had to-
kind of
okay.
schlep it out. But
Okay.
but anyway, this was a little storage set of drawers, and so I get this thing, and it's pretty heavy because it's made of, I think, particle board, which is embedded with pieces of black hole lead. It's something very it's very heavy.
massive,
But,
massive.
but I got it out of the car and took it into my mother's place, and now I open these boxes and I'm taking out shelves and fronts of shelves and backing things and boards, and then I take out the thing that we all fear when we're putting one of these things together is the bag that has all the little screws in it.
Oh, yes.
Now, I have to tell you, there had to be 450,000 of them. And, I mean, it just looked like a lot. And my thought was, well, they wouldn't have put them in here unless they actually wanted me to touch it and put it somewhere to connect. So, actually, I'm going to use all the... So it's not like, they just did this to scare me. No.
You're going to use all
I'm
these.
going to use all of them.
Before we go any further, did you have tools? Because knowing you, I would think...
I'm actually quite good
Okay.
for someone who is occasionally a little clumsy and careless. I don't do great. It's not that I'm a craftsman. I don't do great work, but I have the tools that would make you think
Okay.
that I could
That's
do.
good. So you have all these
So
screws and bolts
but
and
what,
nuts
you know,
and things.
for one of these things, what do you need? You need a hammer and you need a screwdriver. I
Yeah,
mean, so I don't need anything terribly.
I thought you'd have a butter
sophisticated.
knife. That
Well, you could use a butter knife. You could. So anyway, I spread this thing all over my mother's floor, and now I'm assembling it. Now, I will tell you that the amount of time that it took for me to assemble this, I could have flown to Oslo. I could have visited the factory
Right.
and picked it out myself and asked them to assemble it. It was, but I did get it together. And then the last thing is you need to kind of, so it doesn't fall over. You need to, and the big thing was you need to attach it
To the wall?
to a building.
To a building. Okay.
Which reminds me, I bought years ago, and I remember this. This was at I needed a storage shelf for my basement, and they have these inexpensive, well, $40 or so was at the time. It was these metal storage.
Mm-hmm.
It's the
I
side
have,
pieces.
I've had those. Yeah.
And I like this one because it said on the outside, it said something to the effect that you won't cut yourself on the sharp pieces. And I thought, well, it's metal shelves, and chances are you're going to lacerate yourself very badly when you put this thing together. But it said two things on the box that made me buy it, and I think I paid maybe $20 more. Maybe I paid $60 for it because it promised that I was not going to get hurt, and it promised that it was the most stable shelf available today.
All right, hold that thought because we'll keep them in suspense as to what happened. We're talking about handyman Goldstone here and some of his projects, and we'll continue because I'm on pins and needles here, or screws and nuts.
As well you should be.
Okay, well, this is WPZ 1221 with my buddy Chuck Goldstone, who's in the house. Always interesting observations on life and where it leads us. And Chuck has been talking a little bit about putting things together, and You did a good job though with that cabinet
Well,
that
with
you
the
bought
cabinet, well, first of all,
for your mom.
the thing for the little storage unit for my mother. Although I have to say, she came up from Florida, and she's used to a very different kind of weather here. So I went in, and assembling these things is, I mean, it's not heavy lifting, but you're working and so, and it's not that you work up a big sweat, but I will put it in perspective that you will understand. You do you still do the hot yoga?
I do it indeed, absolutely.
And you will explain. I'm sure you have explained to your listeners
Yes.
that it's about 109 degrees
It
in there.
it is actually it is about 105, 106 with a humidity factor of well over 100%.
and you're to sweat the toxins
Yes,
out.
indeed.
Well, when I was assembling this cabinet, it was like hot yoga because my mother, being from Florida, likes to keep the apartment. It's somewhere between 96 and 98 degrees. I think her feeling is
There's a draft in here.
I want it just slightly less than body temperature. Mm-hmm. So, but anyway, I was saying that it threw me back to this idea. I mean, I sometimes buy things that I have to assemble myself, and there's no joy necessarily in it because I don't get any great satisfaction of saying I just assembled this shelf.
What do you do though when you're left over with screws and nuts?
Well, I never.
Oh.
Once in a while, I will find that I am short a screw.
Oh.
People have accused me
Yeah.
of occasionally
A couple of screws being loose.
being that, but
Because I usually have several left over and wonder, there's probably just extras they threw in there in case I lose.
well, you got the ones that sometimes I don't get, but it's a little bit. You know what it's like? It's that kind of assembly. It's like when you go to a Korean hot pot restaurant, and it's like, wait a minute, I came here and I'm cooking my own food on the table here. But anyway, so I bought this from this years ago. I remember I was saying that I bought a basement storage shelf, to keep things in the basement on. And it's a metal shelf, and it's not aesthetically terribly pleasing. And I bought it because it promised on the box two things. One, that it was fairly easy to assemble. Three things. One, it was fairly easy to assemble, which was a little bit of a lie. Second, it said you won't cut yourself on the sharp pieces. And third, it said it's as sturdy as any shelf known to mammals. Mm-hmm. So I buy this thing and I bring it home, and I open it up. And first of all, I read the instruction book. Is it's like the Encyclopedia Britannica, but the set. I mean, it's just there. It goes on for page after page with diagrams that don't really quite conform to what the shelves look like. But now I'm reading the directions, and it first says, and the way the way they can promise that you won't be cut on sharp pieces is not by avoiding putting sharp pieces in. It simply says on the first page, don't cut yourself on the sharp pieces.
Right.
So there is where the responsibility ends.
See? Sure.
So anyway, so now I get this bag of screws, and I spread this thing out, and I finally assemble it. And it's one of these things that get the little crossbars in the back, and you push it in one direction, and it sort of lists one. You've had those kind of shelves.
I have indeed.
And then I figured out
I
why
haven't.
it
Why is
claimed to
that?
be the way you make it the most most stable and sturdy shelf in the industry. It says as the final step, bolt it to your house. So I mean, so the fact is, if you find a load-bearing wall, and then you attach this thing, it's not going to move. So
Now,
that's why.
I have in my house, this is exciting, but I have downstairs in my vast basement where I store all my junk, my tapes and my books. I bought plastic storage things where you can just literally plug one thing in, no batteries or assembly required, really. Works fine. I mean, it's not that aesthetically pleasing, but it's fine. Gets the job done. Takes about 30 seconds to set it up. No cutting.
Well, I will be investigating those kinds of things in the future. So I do tend to buy things that do not necessarily assemble.
You mentioned during the break one of my favorite places, and I don't mind mentioning it because people know what it is, Bed Bath & Beyond.
I never knew. I know what a bed and bath. I just don't know what the beyond is. It's bed, bath, and the intergalactic.
Right, yes, Rod Serling. But what I love about that place is it's just chock full of stuff, and including coffee makers if you want. But I was looking for a toaster. I think we talked about this once before. Remember I
Yeah.
told you how
Yeah.
toaster ovens stink. Well, yeah, if it's okay if you want to make a little, if you want to warm up your macaroni and cheese, but to make toast, forget it. I bought a little toaster for $45. Best toast I've ever had.
Well,
It pops up like they're supposed
I
to.
will tell you, and I since you mentioned Bed Bath and Beyond, I can tell you I finally found the best product, the best appliance I've ever found in my life. I bought one for myself, and it was so good that I bought one for my mother. And I'll mention the name. It's a company called Breville, Breville, and it's this little oven. It's a convection oven, so it's a little bigger than a toaster oven, but it toasts and it roasts and it broils and it does choreography.
Really?
It
Very
I mean,
impressive.
and it heats up in about. I mean, it heats up to like 350 degrees in about 90 seconds.
So it's not obviously
It is
not
the best.
best non-microwave
It
available.
is the best appliance I've ever purchased, and it's one of those things where you think about the irrational things. If your house were ever on fire, what would you grab? I'll grab the kids. I'll grab the cat. I'll grab. I'm going in for my toaster oven. I will
Okay.
carry that out.
So it's terrific. So you
But
bought
no,
one.
I've had these little laughable home experiences. I painted. The one thing that I hate doing more than anything is painting. Now it is very strange because as in my life, I actually paint, but paintings. I'm I
You're
like
talking
oil
about
paint. But
brush
what I
on
hate more
or
than
roller
anything
on the
is
wall.
anything called latex paint. Anything that you would slather onto a wall, I absolutely hate. But I had a dining room that needed painting. This is a few years ago, and I decided, all right, I'm just going to do it. Other grown-ups paint. How hard? It's 4 walls. And how long can it take? So I decided to make it a trendy color, and a really nice color that would work is that salmon rust burnt orange. It's not really orange. It's sort of a salmon. It's a very trendy, wonderful color. So I went out and I learned one thing, and that is the little paint swatches. They're an inch by an inch. They are not accurate unless your room is itself only an inch by an inch. If you live in a little tiny 1-inch room,
Yes.
you can trust the paint chip.
Yeah,
But anyway,
paint for mice. That's what it's all
so
about.
I bought this color and they mixed it for me, and I looked at it and I said, wow, that's a nice color. And I take it home, and now it's about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I said, I'm going to start to paint. Little did I know that you can't paint a room in 2 hours. So I'm now painting, and it's now 3 o'clock in the morning. I have finally finished the second coat of this paint. I go to sleep, and I wake up the next morning really excited about seeing this beautiful salmon-colored dining room. And I walk in, the sun is shining, and therein I learned the lesson is you must buy paint in the sunlight. It was, and let me describe the color.
Before you do that, we've got 10 seconds for a break. I want to know what the color is, but I want to hold it right there. Okay.
It's one word.
Give me the
It
word.
was Home Depot orange.
Okay. Sounds like you had poached salmon. We'll come right back. More fun with Chuck right after this on WBZ.
CBS News Update, I'm Tom Foti. The remaining Republican presidential candidates held their last debate until the morning when they hold another one. It's all leading up to Tuesday's primary in New Hampshire, and that's where we find CBS News correspondent Barry Bagnotto listening intently.
The bottom line is, did Mitt Romney, the frontrunner, hurt himself? He made no major mistakes. The attacks leveled at him weren't new, and he took forceful stands against abortion, China, and